have you made about Declan Rice in the 8, and what have you made about Partey this season in midfield? Obviously, with Partey,
I think Partey's probably had his best season in an Arsenal shirt this year. He was available a lot, I think, in 22, 23. I think he was available, and he also had a very good season
good,
there.
man.
And he's been very good, and that of course means that Rice is going to play that 8. I think Rice, obviously suffering that broken toe, the hangover from the Euros in the summer, and an incredible amount of football. We're only just at this point at midway starting to see the best again of Declan Rice. He was astonishing against City, like ran that game. The engine
He was a
he
monster.
showed. That's the Rice that we have come to learn, is what he's willing to, and not willing to, but he's able, to give us. So that is going to be a big position in the summer that we expect to change. There's no indication that Arsenal are in talks with Partey over a new deal right now. All indications just extrapolating from that to let us know that at this moment in time, he's going to be leaving at the conclusion of his current deal. And also, we know that Martin Zubimendi is a player the club have, done a lot of work behind the scenes to try and secure. And there's a big feeling that is a deal that will happen this summer. And Arsenal may end up paying over, the release clause to get more favourable terms in terms of a payment structure for that deal. So when it comes to him, that is a huge, void that in terms of quality, in terms of the role that Zubimendi is going to have to fill. But if you're asking Arsenal to be ambitious in the market, you're probably looking at going and getting the best option on the market to replace a defensive midfielder in Zubimendi. So I think both Partey and Rice have been, Partey in particular has been excellent this season. Rice, I think we're starting again to see the best of him now. He's been able to gradually kind of come back to form.
So what have you made of Rice in the 8? And if it was down to you, obviously you're not Mikel Arteta or the Cronkies or anyone that makes the decision, but like, what have you made of Rice in the 8? And would you give Partey a new deal if it was up to you?
Well, it's not up to me. And I do kind of see the idea about just taking that step now to move on, because we know that he has and does suffer with these just spontaneous injuries that keep him out for long periods of time. And he's on a huge wage. He's in his 30s. The likelihood is that this is, what we're seeing from him this season could be the best that we do see of him. So if you suddenly give him a new deal rather than signing a younger option that's on the market and available, that you are potentially, taking a very significant risk in that sense. So, yeah, I think from that standpoint, I can understand why the club may indeed decide to move on. With Rice in the 8, he's not scored enough goals this season. I think that's
something he's mentioned himself.
And he knows that, as you point out. And I think that is definitely a kind of a faculty of a left-sided 8 in this Arsenal team that needs to be better. He needs to score more goals. He needs to contribute more to the forward line. He's contributed brilliantly with set piece taking. His
maybe not a reason, but generally, yeah, you're right.
He's been absolutely excellent when it comes to his kind of set piece deliveries, and that is a weapon that Arsenal have really harnessed this season. But we are starting to see him, back to his best again. And then we saw that. I think the Man City game was the perfect example. Even against Newcastle, I was doing the player ratings after that game, and he and Partey again stood out as probably our two best players.
Best of a bad bunch, yeah.
The defence and the goalkeeper let us down, and the forward line let us down in that game. But the midfield didn't, other than Ødegaard. It was just Partey and Rice really did put on a very good display, I thought, despite everybody else around them not delivering. So when that changes, it's going to be very intriguing to see how a new partnership kind of evolves.
And like you said, it's going to be interesting because on one hand, I want the best of both worlds, which would be, if life was simple and Partey keeps this up, you might get a 1 year plus an option. You've got Zubimendi or your game changer. You've got Moreno. You've obviously got Rice, right? But I don't think that's feasible with Ethan's emergence, with Moreno, with us probably bringing in another midfielder, with, like you said, the wages Partey's on. And then you also have to caveat that by saying, and I'm not suggesting this is Thomas, but how many times have you seen a player play out of their absolute skin when it comes to their contract? And you said it there, and I kind of agree. I do think this is Partey's best season in terms of, long-term, like longevity. I think I'd go back to the 2022-23 season where I saw a consistent Partey, but I just feel it's a chance to shed the wages. Where Declan Rice is in the 8, I think, it's hard for me not to love Declan Rice. I hear what people say. No one's above criticism, but I just think there's so much more problems at Arsenal than questioning Declan Rice. We finally got an all-action midfielder. I just wonder how good in the 8 can he be? Like, how many goals would he potentially get? Because it's been in the last 2-3 years, or if that he's been learning that. you're going against a strong body of work where he's been a 6. Now, I kind of understand differently why he doesn't play as a 6 in terms of build-up play at Arsenal, but that's the good conversations we want to have. Obviously, you're not an ITK, you only just report, but like, how confident are you in the Zubimendi stuff? Because I do hear it that, you know, we're talking, we're doing all of this, but until a player is holding the shirt, you can never count your chickens for they hatch. And to me, as someone that just reads the news, it seems like Zubimendi, 1 minute he's going to join and then he's turning his back on something, as Liverpool have probably seen, and maybe us a few years ago.
Yeah. I mean, the Liverpool situation is definitely that would give anybody pause for thought. You know, there was a real feeling towards the end of the summer window that was a deal that was going to happen, and he stayed. And there is always that chance that will happen. You know, until you rightly point out, until that player is in an Arsenal shirt and holding up, and it's on the Arsenal website, anything happens. How many times have we seen a Fabrizio Romano? Here we go. And then we don't go. So
exactly,
these things are. Exactly. Transfers are volatile. Things change. And, you know, people love jumping on the back of journalists that commit to things very quickly because the transfer game is a wild one.
You can't win, man. You
look at, you know, just Arsenal in particular. You've got your ITKs out there. You've got your accounts that deliver transfer news to the best of their knowledge. And usually it comes from a place where they haven't got much to lose, you know, unless they've got something on the line. You're a faceless account. You've not got your name to it. You can just start up another account, try again, go again.
Yeah.
It's a game, and sometimes they genuinely do have their contacts. You know, I'm aware of high follower accounts that have got their links into specific players.
Especially when we signed Partey, the ITKs were doing crazy stuff.
Absolutely, and sometimes people go and acquire information through many means. But from someone who's been in the space for a couple of years in terms of kind of the journalism side of things, rather than the content creation sides of things. Everything that I've heard regarding the Zubimendi thing gives me a lot of encouragement that this is something that, I'd be fairly confident in saying that we've got a very, very good chance of seeing happen this summer. Arsenal have been, as we know, interested in the player for a very long time. I think the interest dates back, potentially 3 years or more.
Many years, really, at this point.
And he's always been a player that's been very attached to San Sebastian and to Real Sociedad in particular. There is a lot of things changing at that club. Obviously, we've seen Mikel Moreno leave. We've seen a lot of players there, like Alexander Isak, move on. There's very few. There's very few that stick it out. Mikel Oyarzabal has stayed there for a very long time, despite links to Barcelona and Manchester City.
We're even linked with their sporting director.
And Roberto Alaba is expected to leave, in the summer as well. So there's a lot of change there. There's a lot of people that are leaving. And I think that Zubimendi probably recognises that this is the time in his career, in his mid-20s, where this is where you make that move. And if you make that move, it's got to be to a club where you're going to feel very confident. Mikel Arteta has very big connections back to San Sebastian, as we know, and to Real Sociedad in particular, and the people at Real Sociedad. And that puts Arsenal and Mikel Arteta in a particularly good situation to try and convince a player like Martin Zubimendi to join Arsenal. He's played with our captain, Martin Ødegaard, at the club as well. Arsenal have interests in other former teammates like Alexander Isak, of course.
The full T-shirt is free as well, Isak, if you're listening.
Absolutely. And Mikel Moreno is here too, a player that he played with as recently as just 6 or 7 months ago. So there is a lot there that gives a big indication. And the biggest indication we've got is that Sami Mokbel, who initially broke this story and got the fantastic scoop, has been very committed in the way in which he's reported that story, that Arsenal are set to land Martin Zubimendi. And then any of the subsequent digging I and others have done around it have only turned up similar kind of feelings. So, yeah, I'm confident about this one.
I mean, and then it raises in question now. Typically, like, obviously, you're not an ITK, but you mentioned your confidence, Sami Mokbel things and whatnot. It seems like when a player is very close to joining one club, quote unquote, they're linked with another. So then when you see the Real Madrid hijack talks, which I'm pretty sure you must have spoken on, does that make you a bit uneasy, especially if Xabi Alonso goes over there?
No, not really at the moment. Stories are written all over the world and names generate a lot of attention. And if you just have a look on things like Google Trends, it will tell you what names are doing the most hits for websites. Websites need hits, and
that's got to be a top one, man.
I remember I did a story a couple of years ago, which was based off of, I think it was Nicolas Pepe. Me and a good colleague of mine then, who's since moved on to other things, Bailey Keogh. We did kind of this panel piece about Nicolas Pepe and how much he was worth. And I think Bailey wrote something on the lines of we should be getting 40 million if we sell him. And that then got picked up and used as like Arsenal looking to sell Pepe for 40 million. It's nuts how these things
it's crazy how the game works, man.
The snowball is huge in this business. So one line of text in an article can get spun and turned into a whole different story. 10. So you have to be very careful what you write. But as long as you've just said things like, in my opinion, it should be clear enough for most reading.
But people won't. You're right, Tom. But that's where I feel sorry for you lot, because you could say, in my opinion, give a think piece as to why you're saying what you're saying, but 2 + 2 = 10. People are just going to say, Tom Gannon said, we're going to go and get this, that, and the other.
I've had to like email websites before and say, like, can you guys stop taking quotes from the show that I've done? It'll be like, journalist Tom Canton says this, and it's a story on like my opinion about a player that someone in the chat box.
They sensationalize it.
It becomes, it'll go to the top of the Google algorithm because it's a name that's popping right now, and it says Arsenal and transfer, and it's just that is just the way it goes. So